What we're going to do is compare how these two machines weld against one another, the little inverter versus a Miller Thunderbolt AC/DC transformer. Now, 7018s do not restart very well, so it's good to have a file handy, a rough file. Knock that glassy substance off there, and it makes them restart a whole lot better. Also, you start better if you can kind of grip the rod up a few inches away and kind of steady it up like that. Now, this is the stinger holder that came with this machine, and I'm not really, crazy about this type, but it's about as good as any. You just have to crank the handle, lock it on the rod, and then you have to bend the rod to get the angle you want. And I usually bend my rod somewhere or another anyway to get the right angle that's comfortable for me. A rod angle is one of those things that can make a lot of difference, but on a joint like this that's just in front of you on the bench, there's a lot of leeway, a lot of forgiveness. You don't have to hold it like between 5 and 7 degrees or something like that. As long as you don't get crazy with rod angle, you'll be okay. Trying to keep a tight arc. Best advice on stick welding, almost anything, is turn the machine up hot enough that when you hold a really tight arc, it won't stick. And then hold a tight arc. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I can pretty much feel the flux kind of rubbing against the base metal. And I'm not resting it against there, although I have done that before. Pretty much let the weight of the rod almost just rest if I crank it up hot enough. But today I'm not holding quite that tight an arc. All right, I'm not showing every side of this. Just kind of give you the idea. We're gonna make a tie in here to that previous crater. Light up in front and then kind of drag it back there. And shoot for that crater and pause for a second and then try to cover up my arc scratches as I go. That's the goal. You always want to strike your arc in front of you where you'll weld back over top of your arc scratches and arc strikes. Any kind of welding test that you're going to take, or if you're welding to code, arc strikes are strictly forbidden. They can produce little stress risers, little hardened areas, and failures can occur off of something as simple as an arc strike. So just get in the habit of striking the arc somewhere that you can weld back over top of it. All right, back up a little bit and snap out. I'm using a little masonry chisel here to knock off spatter BBs. I wouldn't normally grab a masonry chisel to whop on steel with, but just for knocking off spatter, it's a nice wide blade chisel, and it actually comes in pretty handy, a lot more handy than a regular chipping hammer. All right, well, that's the first pass with a little inverter, and I'd have to give it a passing grade. Pretty smooth arc. Probably could have turned it down just a little to reduce the spatter, but I'd rather run it hot and get good penetration. So that makes this machine kind of versatile. You can use any rod basically because it's AC/DC, and you can also do scratch start TIG. I got this thing starting off about 140 amps on DC plus, DC positive, and so now we're going to run 2 beads over top of the 1 bead that we just ran with the inverter, and just kind of compare things and see if one is that much different than the other or not much. Welds like this, multi-pass welds using 7018 are fairly common in the industry. Even when I was a pipe welder, I also had to weld quite a bit of structures like this for pipe supports and pipe hangers. And you know what? There's a skill to it. A lot of guys throw off on structural welders. Oh, it doesn't take as much skill as does pipe welding. It's just a different skill set. And I had much respect for the guys that did it when I had to do it, because you have to get in all kind of tight spots and all kind of positions. And you got to make a weld free from undercut and right fillet weld size and all that stuff. Just a whole different skill than pipe, but a skill nonetheless. It's a little bit cold, so I'm going to crank it up 5 to 10 amps or so, and see how the rest of it goes. Didn't do too badly, but it just seemed a little cold. These dials like this on welders, they are about as accurate as a Zebco 33. I mean, it's not exactly precision, close enough, but one machine is different from the other a lot of times. Let's see what happens here. A little hotter. I don't know. Too early to tell. Actually seems like I could crank it up a little bit more. But it is hot enough that it's not trying to stick with me at all, and that's a good sign. You can see how much I'm trying to overlap that first pass, probably about 2/3, a little more than half. And that's important when you're doing a multi-pass weld like this. You would think you want to overlap it exactly halfway. That's usually not enough. You usually wind up with a little low place between the first and second bead if you do that. All right, a quick chip and hammer wire brush action, and we'll be ready to put that second pass on. See what kind of shape we're in here. So far, so good. I really honestly can't tell a huge difference between the outcome from the inverter and this little Thunderbolt here. Both are fine. The inverter's probably got a little smoother arc, but how does that translate into the actual bead? I don't think much. It just pretty much allows you to make a nice bead either way, and the biggest advantage of the inverter is portability. You can throw that thing on your shoulder and put it in the trunk of your car, backseat of your car, floorboard of your car, whatever. And this little Thunderbolt, you might strain your gut trying to haul it around much. It's just pretty hefty. Now, which one's going to be here 30 years from now? Anyone's guess. That's also always a consideration when you're shopping for a welder. You know, is this going to be something that my kids are going to use? Does that matter to you? You know, these transformers are pretty rugged machines, and inverters don't have the reputation yet of being as rugged as transformers. That just is what it is. Now this Thunderbolt here died on me in a video not too long ago, and it actually, what it was had a dent in it from when I bought it. I bought it off Craigslist for $350, and it's like new, looking anyway. It had very few hours on it, but it groaned a lot when it was welding, and it had a dent in the side. And come find out, I guess it was making contact with something internally. And anyway, I took the panel off and did a little hammer dolly action on the dent, and so that it wasn't making contact with the little mechanism that changes amperage in there. The case wasn't, and welds again just fine. And so I'm glad too, because I like to have machines like this in the arsenal for doing videos with, because a lot of people have simple machines like this. We'll hit it a lick with the wire cut brush and see what we got.